Good evening and welcome once again to this episode of It's My Turn Now. Certainly glad to be here with you. I want you to invite your friends, invite your family, invite your neighbors, whoever. We have a very interesting subject that we're going to be discussing on tonight. To some, it may be controversial, but I think that we must realize the importance that the church must be aware of what's going on in our community. Sometimes we turn a blind eye to different things that are happening, but we need to know really what's going on. And so I'm encouraging you to just invite your friends, share this with us, with someone else. But certainly, we want to hear your opinion on the subject tonight. The subject tonight is addressing gender and race issues in and the church and the church, addressing gender and race issues and the church. Uh, I have and the church because I think it's important that we realize that uh, things that happen, as we say in the church world, things that happen in the world affects us in the church. And so we have to understand that whatever affects whatever's going on in the world is eventually is going to evolve until it gets to the point where it's going to affect you and I. And so we must be aware of that. We just have to be aware that it's going to affect us, and we have to be wise as a serpent, as Scripture says, and harmless as a dove. And so we have to know what's going on. So again, please feel free to share this with someone because it's a very important topic. Uh, and I know that there are some people who have just resolved to say, you know what, I'm not even going to watch the news. There's so much going on that I'm not going to even watch the news. Should that be the attitude of a child of God? Should we just get so frustrated uh, with what's going on in the world that we don't even pay attention to the news? Or should we be actively involved and know what's going on and be proactive rather than reactive? So, whatever's happening out here, it's going to affect us eventually. It's going to affect the church. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect your family. It's going to affect your community. So we need to know what's happening. I think it's important that we have a discussion on certain things that are happening and to get our input, to get your input as to what your thoughts are. So please join us. Please feel free to share your comments and thoughts. On last week, I had someone call me or who had we spoke with who I had encouraged him. I always encourage you if you want to come on live, click on the link. Well, they did attempt to come on live, but they clicked on a link from an older broadcast. Each week, I place a new link uh, for the program. So if you want to come on, make sure that you do click on the proper link because that's what happened with him. But please click on the link so that if you want to come on, or you can just leave a message, let us know that you're here, leave us a message so that we'll know that you're on here and that you're watching the program. And so if you're watching the program on today, feel free, make sure that you click on the link from today. That's so important that you click on the proper link. Otherwise, you'll be clicking on a link of a earlier broadcast, and we won't be able to see or be able to communicate with you. Today's subject again is uh, the address the issue of gender and race and the church. How do we as a church deal with that? Do you have any thoughts? Do you have any ideas concerning that? Let us know what your thoughts, what your ideas are. What do you think about that? Do you think is this a discussion that needs to be had, or do you think that we something we should? Because there are a lot of issues that I found that a lot of issues as a church that we don't need to talk about this. When it comes to politics, the church that we don't need to talk about this until the politics end up affecting the church. And many times, if we want to make positive changes, we've got to be willing to get engaged to what's happening, stay engaged and connected to what's happening so that we can make a difference. So that's why I'm encouraging you on today to just come on. If you're on here, come on, let us know what your thoughts are. I read an article uh, just recently where a famous cartoonist, and I won't even mention his name, a famous cartoonist, talked about racism, and he talked about um, how he felt that the African American, he felt like, I guess to sum it up, he felt as though that we should just separate, the blacks and whites should separate. Let me know if you agree with that. If you agree with that, I have a lot of friends, that I associate with, and we have to be honest with what's going on. There are a lot of things that are happening um, that are really changing the landscape of society, or things that are happening that are changing the landscape of society. And if we're not careful, we can get caught up and not know what's happening. So I think it's important that we do, recognize what's happening. But in the article, he was saying, and unfortunately, he's a cartoonist, and unfortunately, well, I know unfortunately, but he was dropped from a number of syndications because of his outspoken negative thought patterns, feeling that we should, that we should not be associated. That felt like he should not be associated with uh, African Americans. So I just want to know what your thoughts are. Again, each week for some reason we have a little challenge when it comes to the program going public, and so if you're on here, let me know, because for some reason I'm not able to see any comments at this point right here, and sometimes it takes a few minutes before we're able to actually view the comments. So I want you to come on here and let us know what your thoughts are. Give a few more minutes. Okay, so I'm getting. It looks like a lot of times we have a challenge each week with uh, the StreamYard for some reason. Sometimes it comes on fine, sometimes it doesn't. So if you're out there, please give me a comment. Normally by this time right here, um, we're able to go public, and maybe to see who's on here. But it really troubles me when I see the challenges, and especially with this being Black History Month, and this is we're wrapping up the last few days of Black History Month, and so I think it's important that this program will address something regarding Black History Month. There's some people who say, well, we don't really need Black History Month, uh, and I think that we need to celebrate all our heritage, not only Black history, but celebrate everyone's heritage, Hispanic, Indian, wherever your ethnic background is. I think it should be celebrated. I think we should be willing to embrace it with other people. So we should be willing to embrace it. But there are those who feel like that is unnecessary. When you identify a certain culture, they feel like that shouldn't be done. But I think it's important to recognize different culture. I think Black History Month, I think it's important for people to know their heritage. History is important. Not only African American history, but other histories are important as well. And so we have to realize that everyone's history is important. It's important to know what your history, know where you came from, know where you're going. And there are those who would love to. Uh, there are those who would love to just eradicate our history, but our history allows us to understand where we've been, and where we're going. So, okay, I see Shirley. Well, finally got one. Shirley shared. Thank you for sharing. So I see it here. But there are those who would like to eradicate our history. They're saying, if you don't understand your history and don't understand where you came from, then often you're going to repeat the same mistakes of the past. But knowing your history allows you to understand the challenges that you have to get to where you're at, allows you to recognize and learn to appreciate the success of where you are right now, because there's some people and a lot of young people may not recognize the struggles that we have had to go through to get there. Just family, just enjoy as your family history. Every family has a unique history. There's some people who were uh, raised who had plenty of money, and so uh, that's is they've not had the struggles. But those who have had struggles recognize that, in order to be successful in life, you have to realize where you came from. You have to know where you came from. So there are those that will try to hinder us from focusing on the past and focusing on history. And I think it's sad when a person says, "Well, you can't. We don't want you to focus on your history because it's going to offend someone else." Well, history is history. You're not changing it. You're just becoming aware of it, of what the history is. It's a problem when you change the history. When you say, well, this is the way it is, but we're going to rewrite the history, then that becomes a problem, because then you're dealing with something that's inaccurate, is something not real, something that's not true. And so we got to understand that we've got to write the truth. Many times, even in the Bible, from a biblical standpoint, uh, they would say, God would tell them to record this as a remembrance, let the people know where they came from. So I think if we go by what some people are saying, then they would not even have recorded the history of Israel, because of the challenges that the Israelites had and how they were in bondage and how they suffered. And that could easily offend someone. So what do you do? Do you not discuss it? Do you not talk about it? Like I said, do you turn a blind eye to it? What do you do about your history? When someone chooses to erase your history, what are you going to do when they choose to erase your history? When you choose to erase a person's history, it's almost as though that person never did exist. God bless us, Paul. Greetings and praise the Lord to you as well. So when a person tries to erase your history, it's almost as though you did not exist. And I think it's a sad thing when we try to erase individual history. So there are some people who say, well, you know what? I don't think we need to celebrate Black History Month. I think, it's unnecessary. What are your thoughts? If you're on here, do you think that we should celebrate Black History Month, or you feel like some that we shouldn't do it? Tell me. This is near the end of Black History Month. I think it's important for the African heritage that you understand where you came from. And so maybe if we understood and we focus on the positive things, because many times we see the negative aspect, but there's so many individuals who have contributed to society, who have contributed to this country, who has made this country what it is. And not only when we talk about history, history is so important. Just as an organization, there are so many different organizations. The church, where the churches come from, the struggles that the church has, and anytime there's been a reformation or a big change, the church was there somewhere at some point. And so we have to realize, we have to understand this. So I want to know what your thoughts are. If you feel like, do you feel like that's something that should be addressed, or you feel like it should not be addressed? But I think certainly during Black History Month, I think that it's important. But like I was saying, the article was I was kind of disturbed when I read the article that Jim was saying that he felt as though that blacks and whites should not be together; they should be separated. I guess and there are some people who feel like let the blacks go their way, the Mexican, Hispanics, African, whoever go their different way. But as children of God, there should be a unity in the body. Everyone, we should be as one. We should be able to support each other. We should be able to love each other. We should be able to lift each other up. And so we have to understand, when we look at the political climate, uh, there's so much polarization within the political climate. And I don't know if you haven't seen it. I don't know where you've been, or those saying what planet you come from, but there's a lot of polarization, and it's not getting any better. So what should the church do? I always try to give everyone on here, try to give you an opportunity to express your feelings. But I'd like to know, what do you think? What is the solution? What should we do? And I know there are those who say, well, I'm not going to say anything. A lot of challenges, struggles have happened because good people refuse to say anything. So if I'm aware of what's going on, then not only do I analyze what's going on, we as a church must be a praying people. And as a praying people, we must see, understand, and recognize the time, recognize what's going on, recognize how we can effectively address these issues. Because sometimes we are waiting for the world to do it, but we are the people of God, and we ought to make a difference. The people of God should make a stand. God bless you, lady men. So glad that you're watching. Tell the bishop I said, praise the Lord. Sister Menace, Nassau, Bahamas. So glad to have you on here. So, what should the church do? Like I said earlier, the church should. Sometimes we are reactive. That means we wait till something happens and then we respond. But can we be proactive? Can we say, let's look at what's going on? What can we do? How can we contribute? Should we have seminars? Should we talk about the issues, or because they're going on, the things are happening, and we are acting as though that they're not happening, but they're happening. There's a lot of gender issues in the church as well. How do we address that? And I'm not talking about necessarily in the church, but some of these issues are in the church. But I'm referring not only to the church, I'm referring to how does the church address these issues? The issues that are out there that we see on a job. Sometimes people deal with issues on a job. Some churches are struggling with issues, and different beliefs and different ideologies, different belief systems. So, what is your belief? What do you believe? Do you think everything's fine, or do you believe that you should get involved? Do you just believe that you should pray about it? And some people believe that I'm just going to pray about it. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to pray about it. But what happens when, I always believe this right here. I'm a firm believer that faith without works is dead. So I think that I have faith and I trust in God, I believe in God. But I believe when God presents something to me, and God shows me something, then I must be vigilant enough to say that, how am I going to respond to it? Am I going to act like it's not happening? Am I going to pray about it? Naturally, I'm going to pray about it. But after you get finished praying, what are you going to do? When you see certain things that are going on, what are you going to? Because what happens outside of church eventually is going to happen in church. And I found every situation you think about, it's going to affect people in the church. It's going to affect people in your church. There are people who are being affected by a lot of different situations. So on your job, if your boss espouses to what this cartoonist believes, that blacks and whites should not be together, then that may be a problem, because it's going to affect your job or your position in your job. Okay, God bless this James. He says there used to be a law that blacks and whites could not marry. This has only been legal a few years. Also, church would send the whites over on South Fletcher, and they would send their black members to Grace, etc. So now Sister Jamie is actually being truthful, and sometimes we look at things and we don't. Wow, that's terrible. But this is the reality of what's going on. And so, what I'm hearing Sister Jamie say, it hasn't been that long ago, and if we are not aware of that, then we can easily get back to that. But I think it's a beautiful thing that we're able to get together, that the blacks and whites can marry, and they can marry whoever they want to. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. So, but if you don't know your history, then you wouldn't understand, where you came from. A time we deal in Black history where there were whites only restaurants and whites only fountains. And I know that that's a sensitive issue to a whole lot of people, but that's the truth. Does that change the way I feel about people? No, I love people, regardless of who they are. I have a love for them, and I have a respect for them. I have a respect for the history. But by the same token, I cannot put a blind eye to the reality of what's happening. That there are those, as Sister Jamie begins to point out, there are those who would like to revert back to that, and and we come too far to take steps backwards, where we are saying that we're going to separate ourselves because we're better working together. We're better when we work together, when we support one another, when we love one another, when we encourage one another. So, Treva, God bless you. Praise the Lord. God bless you. Let me see. All she says, Treva's watching. Thank you for watching. So I appreciate your comment, Sister Jamie. I'm sure someone else had. So Treva said didn't get the topic. The topic is uh, addressing gender and race issues in the church. And so with this being Black History Month, I feel like, I feel like I should allow at least 1 week to address this right here. And so a lot of us it's almost like we're afraid to address it. Why be afraid to address the truth? And let's deal with it. And let's put, as I said, let's put all the cards on the table, and we can effectively make some positive changes and be able to communicate with one another and address that. And they got this thing that some people call woke or critical race theory, and I think that's been interpreted totally different. I think it depends. If we're not careful, we can affect the view of how things are looked at. We may look at it one way, and someone else may want to look at it from a negative viewpoint. But the truth of the matter is that when we think of a critical race theory, for the most part, they're talking about understanding and recognizing history and recognizing where you came from. So when we're talking about excluding certain things like Martin Luther King, from the history, what you're saying is you're allowing us not to recognize where we came from, and if we exclude that from it, then we can't have a great appreciation for who we are. So I think it's important that we know, just as we do in the church, those who are his church religious historians, we have to recognize where we came from. We have to That's almost saying that we should not talk about the Bible or the cross, because if we're talking about being offensive to someone, the cross is certainly is offensive to the unbeliever. And so when we talk about Calvary and we talk about the pain, the suffering of Jesus, that suffered like no one else did, are we going to find it? Are we going to take that out of the history and say, well, that's too offensive for someone? It's true. There are some things that are hard to swallow, but they're the truth. And if it's the truth, then the scripture says you should know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So we got to walk in the truth. So if you're on here, please let us know what your thoughts and what your views are. I know it's a subject that a lot of people know. When we talk about gender, I read an article about Dwayne Wade. He talked about his son, or his daughter now. He calls his daughter, and he supported his daughter. What are your thoughts about that? I think at the time that his son came out, I think he was about 12 years old, 10, 11, 12, something like that. My thing is right here is there are things that I address. There are some things that I don't address. One of the things I will say, I think at a certain age within a person's life, uh, their gender, if you're talking about gender reassignment, then I think there are some things you can't, you're not allowed to vote till you're 18. There's a lot of things you can't drink until you're 21. There are a lot of things that, we're not able to do. So I think that's important when we talk about certain things. I think it's important that you have to be mature enough to understand the ramifications of what you're doing. Sister Jamie, Bishop, have you ever thought about our descendants were given their master's name, and even our name is not what we presently have? We were stripped of our name and religion. That is quite hard to swallow. So thank you, Jamie. So this is our history. And I think knowing that, Sister Jamie, it allows us to understand the challenges that our forefathers had. So I think it's important that we hold on to that. We have to know heritage. I remember when I was doing some missionary work in Africa, and I saw East Africans. I used to wonder why they had these marks on their face. And the bishop told me in Africa, he said he saw that's an honor because the mark represented their family heritage, and they wanted to keep that mark because it reminded them of their heritage, where they came from. There's certain things we have to be reminded of where we came from, to value where we came from, and to appreciate where we're going. See, some of the younger generation, I hate to say it, some of the younger generation don't value the struggles that we had to go through because of many opportunities. And I remember coming up as a teenager, as a child, hearing our parents saying, "You know what? You guys have a whole lot better than we have, and you all appreciate where you're at, the education, the opportunities that you have." And so I didn't really understand what was being said to me at that time. But as I got older, I realized we are blessed. I tell my daughter now, I say, listen, you are blessed. You have a lot of opportunities that I didn't have when I was your age. And but if we turn a blind eye to a lot of things, what will happen is we'll go back and we'll lose the advancements that we have accomplished. So the church has to take a stand. I'm gonna say again, the church has to take a stand. Now the church can say we're not gonna be involved in that. We aren't doing. So when things start happening, um, we want to be start crying, but we can't. If we can be proactive, we can prevent a lot of things. When we deal with a lot of young people, these young people out here, there's a lot of shooting, there's a lot of killing, there's a lot of things that are going on here, and we have to understand if we don't deal with it, we're gonna have some problem. And so we've got to understand, let people know where they came from, let them know the history, and we have to learn how to build positive relationships, build healthy relationships between the races, because what happens is the loudest voice in the room gets attention. So I believe that the loudest voice is not the negative people. Well, yeah, unfortunately it is. It should not be. Let me put it that way. It should not be the negative sayer, but the loudest voice should be those who have been called of God, and those who know the truth, and those who can walk in truth, and those who are not afraid, amen, to stand up for what's right. And it does cost to stand up for what's right. It's some people just like to just be passive and not address issues. But Jesus addressed the situations of the time. He addressed the political climate. He talked about the scribes and the Pharisees, and he has some pretty rough names to call those folks. And yes, we ultimately know that they hate him. But when you stand for truth, everybody's not gonna like you. Everybody's not gonna like it when you stand for the truth, but we need some men and women that are going to stand for the truth. We need pastors, we need leaders, we need people to be active in the community. I think there's a place for everyone. I spoke at church yesterday, and I talked about our purpose, and everyone must recognize their purpose, and we should be change makers. We all be those who are saying, "I want to make a change. I want to make a change in my community." Or are you just going to look and see what's going on? I think that was one of the Kennedy brothers said. Some people look and say why, but there are others and say why not. So I like that. The attitude we should have is when we see things going on, instead of saying, I wish things were this way, then I need to ask myself, we need to ask ourselves, what can I do to contribute to positive change? What can I do? And we have to be willing to address these issues. So I was hoping some more people, because I do have people oftentimes that ask me questions and they inbox me. And so when the programs comes on, when the program comes, I don't say anything, but I want to know what your thoughts are. But like I said, when it comes, as a therapist, I deal with a lot of different individuals, and as a therapist, I try to be as objective as I can But I do think there are some things that we don't have the mental. Uh, you have to be a certain maturity age to have the capacity to make proper decisions. That's why you can't drink until you're 21. There's certain restrictions, age restrictions to some things. So I think there's some things that are so vital as gender reassignment. I think that's something that should be given some very serious consideration. I think and we're doing younger and younger age now. If that's way their thoughts are, you know, you know, you got to understand that our interests change. When I was younger, I wanted to be a police officer one day. Next day, I wanted to be a fireman. Want to be a lawyer. So many different things. And I would change, and that's how we are. So we can't make life changing decisions without getting it proper. And I'm just talking right now from a objective viewpoint. Objective viewpoint, because when I counsel with many of my clients, I deal with them from a um, objective viewpoint. And I've had clients that have shared with me their desire for reassignment and things like that, and I tell them, whatever you do, you have to give some thought. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. You have to be mindful of lifelong effects of what you're doing. Just as in the media, anything you do, you have to be mindful of the effects. Even when you're talking with modern communication, you have to be careful what you say because they're always going to be out there, and there's people always going to be monitoring what you say. If you're not careful, there's someone going to be misrepresent what you're saying. But you have to say it and say what you mean and mean what you say and not be afraid. Don't be afraid if you have a conviction because the church should have some type of conviction. Do you have a conviction? Are you one of those who say, I don't want anyone, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to stir up? Listen, if you don't say anything, there's going to be people talk about you. If you say something, people are going to talk about you. So what you gonna do? One thing I tell people know me. I say this right here: I have a right to voice my opinion. That's a right. That's a privilege. You should have a right to voice your opinion. I think you do. But you have to do it. You have to know how to do it in a respectful way. You can't just can't say what think in a disrespectful way. All right. Sister Jamie, thank you. Says today on here feels passive in the comments. I am a pretty straight shooter. I had my 68th birthday on Friday. Happy birthday to you, 24th. Only God. Well, right, it does seem kind of passive. Seem like folks are I don't know if they are afraid or they don't want to express themselves, but that's okay. Like I say, it's my turn now. It's your turn now. Whoever's on here, it's your opportunity to express it. So sometimes people they want to talk, but when they have an opportunity to make a positive input, then they want to keep quiet. But we all have a view. Now you can say I'm not going to say anything, but you do have a view. Whoever watching this right here, I have a view. And if you come on later on, because a lot of times I have people who watch the program, they tell me, well, I don't watch it live, I watch it afterwards. I still want you to give your comment because I want to hear what it is saying. Whether you black, white, Hispanic, Asian, African, whatever, feel free to share your comment because I like to know what you think. Because no two people think alike. That's a fact. No two people think alike. My wife and I, we born the same month, same day, same year. But we don't think alike. People do. So I would like to know what your opinion or what your views are. And this is a forum where you are free to share and express your thoughts. I try not to, you know, have a negative slant or anything. I try to be as objective as I can. But you can be objective and objectively express yourself without attacking anyone because you'll never see me attacking anyone on this platform because that's not what it's about. But it's to be informative and to give those who are listening an opportunity to just express your thoughts, express your views. Now, the person who attempted to come on live last week, I don't see them on here today, but I think this was alluding to part of their question, and I told them that I didn't answer your question because I wanted to know that them to be more specific. Because sometimes when people asking questions, you don't want to misunderstand them, and many times when you're texting on here, your text can be misconstrued, and so I don't want that to happen. So if it's something I think is serious enough, I think that you ought to feel free to click the link. There's a link on my Facebook page where you can come on live and express yourself. So, but they did try to do it on last week, but they copied a link from another broadcast. So I wasn't able to see them. So he asked me afterwards, what happened? I tried to come on, but it say I was in waiting. Well, I guarantee you this right here. If you click on the wrong link for today, we won't see you. So make sure that you click the link on my Facebook page today if you want to come on live. But I think I would like to say hear what some other pastors have to say. What do some of the pastors have to say? You feel like, or even if you feel like, well, you know what, we don't need to talk about that. Let's just talk about the Bible. Maybe that's what you think. You know, I feel like you can talk about the Bible. You can talk about what's going on out there, what's affecting you, what's going to affect your children, what's going to affect your grandchildren. I think it's okay to talk about it. I mean, if you're not running down or ostracizing someone or some other culture or some other person, your belief system, I think it's okay. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to express yourself. You know, maybe someone here that wants to hear what you have to say, and this can also be a learning curve for someone because sometimes people just don't know. There are people that just don't know the history. There are people just don't know the facts. And I think it's important to know the facts. Sometimes I get frustrated watching news, and I'm just like a lot of people. I get frustrated watching news, but guess what? I will watch different. I will watch conservative news, a liberal news, because I want to get different viewpoints. I want to see what what they all have to say, and and that way I can form my own opinion. Don't let somebody. And that's why I share with someone. Don't let somebody else do your thinking for you. Learn to understand and decipher things for yourself. True, we the black race need to do what God wants us to do. Love one another and not let your past dictate your future and the things going on. We too talk more about what God said in the Word. Yes, that's true, and I agree with. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's important, Sister Triva. Is what's important is that we have to understand that the Bible, on many occasions, Jesus told them, as well as God in the Old Testament, would tell people, "Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget it took a strong hand for you to come out of Egypt." And so he expressed the importance of that. He told them to write this down, write it on table, write it down, make note of it. And so I agree with, and I hear what you're saying, but this is what the Bible's saying. Bible said we're not ignorant concerning the devil's advice. We're not ignorant concerning of what's happening in our society, and we need to be aware. So you're right. We do need to talk about what's happening in the Bible, but there are things that are happening in the political realm that's affecting us all. If we're not aware of what's going on, then we can easily lose out or easily not no longer have even the right to express ourselves. And if we lose the right to express ourselves, we won't be able to. May come a point where they say, "Well, you can't even talk in the church. You can't have freedom of speech." So I think this. Why are we going to wait till we lose our freedom and then cry, why? When we need to be aware, at least be aware, at least have a discussion, of what's going on, at least know what's going on. Because there's some people don't know. There's some people, I remember years ago when I first came into church, they didn't believe in TVs. So because we didn't believe in TVs, there were a lot of us, we just didn't know what's going on. And the only information you get, possibly maybe the information that was get in the church. And if your pastor or those in the church uh, didn't have access to the media, what's going on, then we really wouldn't know what's going on. So And I'm gonna say this a little bit from Black history. Since the Black History Month, there are a lot of slaves that were free but didn't know they were free, so they stayed on the plantation because they were not aware of the fact that they were set free. And then there were some that had heard that they were free, but were afraid to step outside the compounds for fear of that's a big world. I don't know how am I going to handle myself in the world. So we have to be knowledgeable. God bless you, brother Jeff. Praise the Lord. Back to you as well. So let me see, Sister Jamie. Call me tree back to this new phone number. All right, boy. See, there you go. It's my turn now. You can leave messages to each other if you want to. That's all right. So we need to know what's going on. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. We're gonna try to end at 9 o'clock today because I think there's only a few people that are willing to. There's a few people who are willing to express, but I don't have any problem. It's my turn now. I have no problem expressing because anybody know me, know my love for people. My love for people does not limit to a particular race of people, but I am aware of what's going on. And I am aware and I do operate in knowledge and operate in understanding. But again, I read about Dwayne Wade and his daughter, son, which came home early and said, this is what I want, uh, want to be, and I respect any parent who say, hey, listen, I want to support my child. Hey, I have no problem with you supporting your child, but I think there's certain age restrictions to some things. People at a young age really don't know what they really want. I mean, there are those on here who at a young age, struggle with life. Life is challenging. Life is hard, and you need to be give a lot of consideration before we make some change. One of the things I say, and it's as a therapist. Sometimes I tell people I have clients that have a lot of tattoos. I say you can have as many tattoos as you want to, but just some people are impulsive, and some people just act out of impulse. I said, if you think about getting a tattoo, write it down. Say, this is what I want to do. Put it in a journal. Say, this is what I want to do. And give it 30 days at least. There are things I may want to do today. And then by tomorrow, I change my mind. Ooh, I'm glad I didn't do that. So, I'm a firm believer, you have to take time, and some decisions that we make. I wonder how many decisions do we make? Do we give it some serious consideration? Are you impulsive? Do you just make decisions without just and there's some people that they just make a decision without even thinking. They don't think about what they're doing. They just jump right into it, and there's a lot of regret behind that. So you got to think about that. You have to consider what you're doing when it comes to gender reassignment. I think a child many times is a child. And a ch- they're talking about having letting kids at a younger age carry pistols. You know, that to me, children are impulsive. Well, we got grown folks that act like kids. They're impulsive. We got folks shooting folks and not even thinking about it because they have not developed mentally, emotionally. There's a lot of grown folks out here that just intellectually immature. Their emotional mature age has not caught up with their physical age, and so they respond out of emotions rather than responding with thinking, rationally thinking. Because Jamie says some of the transgenders get deserted. Then, when they are older, they want to change, but can't always go back. It's a done deal, and that's true. And that's the truth. Maybe I may have a transgender come on here. I think that we ought to think of all the size of things now. Just think things out. Uh, like I was saying with tattoo. So I had some clients who will get a tattoo, and some. I wonder how many people have gotten a tattoo and say, "Man, I regret this." Some people love their tattoos, and that's okay. But I tell them, if you're gonna get a tattoo, think about it because it's permanent. Some of them, they say they can come off, but I'm talking about when I say that, I'm talking about people getting tattoos all up here and then they get on the face. and then then they want to get a job, and sometimes that can affect you on when you try and get a job, tattoos. So now maybe let me. That's another subject. What do you think about tattoos in church? Some people do not believe that you should have a tattoo in the church at all, but I think right now people have no problem. Joyce Myers, which is a lot of people think a lot of her, and she was 80 some years old, decided that she wanted to get a tattoo. Hey, but I guess she's old enough to think about. At least she's old enough to know by now if that's what she want to do or not. When you get in your 80s, things like that. But but a person who makes a irrational decision at a young age, we have to think about that. So Treva says, I try not to keep up with politics, but I hear about the president and how we are to vote. The crimes and shootings that have happened since they approved gun laws. I cry daily for mothers who lose their children from being shot. We need to pray for change. Sister Treva, I agree with you 100%. We need to pray for change, but listen to what you're saying is that you hear about it. You're fortunate to hear there are things that are happening. If we don't have our ears to the ground, so to speak, we won't know what's going on. There are some people that are oblivious to what's going on. They have a blind eye. They don't know what's going on. You talk about politics. They don't know anything about anything. Then they don't, some of them, and many of those, when it comes to church, they only really study the Bible. So they don't really know that much about Bible. All they know is what they've been heard quote over and over again. We must be willing to learn, to study, to show ourselves approved to God, workmen, men and women that need not be ashamed. So we need to get involved. We need to get understanding. All they're getting understanding. So we have to get understanding of what's going on. The Bible talks about the sons of Issachar. Those are people who knew the times and what they ought to do. We need men and women that say, hey, I know what needs to be done. I'm going to make a change. And sometimes we're in the world, but we're not in the world, but we do need to know what's going on. We do need what's on. Now, some people carry it too far. Some folks say, we're in the world, we're not in the world, but in order to reach folks, we got to be just like them. You ain't got to be like them, but you may have to have an understanding, and you may need to talk to some people, hear what they're saying. So as a therapist, I hear a lot of what people are saying and what people are sharing with me. And so it allows me to see things from different vantage points. So I see different things, different views of different people. I'm able to respect their views. Do I have to agree with everything? No, I don't have to agree with everything no one says. I don't agree with everything people say in the church. I don't have to agree with everything people say in the church, but I respect what people say. See, the problem is sometimes we are afraid to challenge negative thoughts. We're afraid to challenge things that we disagree with. But I believe that you can challenge it, but I think there's a respectful way to doing it. I've been around a long time. I've been in church a long time. And to the best of my knowledge, I have never openly or never have disrespected anyone in leadership. It's one thing. I don't think that you can be an effective leader if you can't be an effective follower. One thing I say, doesn't mean I have to agree with everyone. But if I have a question, I'll go to that person. I'll say, hey, explain this to me. I'm not sure. Tell me how, and maybe it may change my viewpoint and maybe it won't. So, but I do have the right to express myself. And so I think, answering your question, Treva, in order to know what's going on, you have to listen to people. Sometimes you have to go sit in these meetings. If you feel like you shouldn't say anything, sit in these town hall meetings. Go visit, listen to what your legislator is saying. And then when it comes time for election, uh, there's some folks that I ain't gonna vote, and there's some people don't even know who to vote for because they haven't they're not aware of what's going on. So we as a church we really need to get a lot more involved in what's going on. At least know what's going on. At least show an interest. Because what happens, we don't show an interest, and then when things start going south, then all of a sudden, wow, we all up and on, but then it's too late. Bro, Jeff, how do you get leaders to help educate you without thinking you are trying to take over? That's a good question, bro, Jeff. You have to, scripture, know them that labor among you, whoever it is, build relationships. When you're able to build a relationship with the person and they feel comfortable, many times, unless they are, there are some people who are insecure. If they're not insecure, a good leader is willing to pour into other people. Insecure leader is afraid to pour into someone else because they feel like they may do better than them. But you have to be secure in what you're doing. So if you have a secure leader, they're going to be willing to just share with you whatever they have. I mean, what little knowledge I have, I'm willing to share, with whoever I can because that makes them better. And then the exchange, it makes me better listening to them. You're never too old or too smart to feel like you can't learn something. So I guess the answer to your question is how do you present yourself? Some people, and you have to mind to yourself because some people are loud and boisterous, and so that can be interpreted as a takeover attitude. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. But I'm saying that's how some people are. It can be interpreted. So you have to understand dynamics of who you talk to, and know, try different methods to go to them. Go to him or her and say, I like to learn this right here. And so I think, if most people, if they feel like you're sincere and you approach them the right way, I think most people will receive it as well. Sister Jamie, good answer. Unsecure is a problem with some of God's people. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, are insecure and a lot of different things. But we have to be secure, and then if you don't want to take the initiative, I think maybe, sometimes maybe the pastors, the leaders in church may want to have a representative when there's certain meetings. There's certain neighborhood associations where they're making changes and funding. You need people that are out there who have the ears to the ground that can give you positive suggestions and bring you back to the church so they can help you when it comes to when it comes to enhancing your church, because there's a lot of things out there, a lot of money, a lot of programs out there. But if you don't know, if you say I don't want to know, you in your own little bubble, then you're not going to be able to take advantage of what's going on. Help, Lord. All right, Brother Jeff, that's right. Help, Lord, we need your help. Help us, Lord, to understand. All right. We got about 7 more minutes. If you've been holding back, you got 7 minutes to come on and share with us what your thoughts are. Sometimes people say, "Man, I wish somebody would listen to me." This is your opportunity. Sometimes they want a chance to listen and be heard, but when the opportunity comes, then they don't want to say anything. So what do you do? So, question is the spiritual to ask question, but that's in a nutshell. That's what sometimes people feel like that you're not spiritual because you're asking questions. You're not spiritual because you're addressing issues. One of the things that if you heard on this program, even on tonight, I said addressing gender and race issues in the church. I'm not even talking about addressing race and gender issues in the church because I know there are some issues in the church, but I'm saying in the church, how should the church address those issues outside? Because what's on the outside is eventually coming to the inside, and it's going to affect you. If it doesn't affect you now, it'll affect you later, and so you need to at least be aware of it. I wonder how many churches had a Black History uh, recognition, have discussed or talked about Black history. You can't be afraid to talk about the history. I mean, it's sad if you get yourself to the point where you are afraid to talk about the history, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about history. We should embrace our history. We should embrace who we are and embrace our faith in God and ask God to help us to make the right decisions. Help us to make the right choices in life. Lord, help me to love one another. We have to ask God that help us not to have any prejudice within ourselves for other people, but we as the believers must learn how to love everybody. We got to love everybody. If you love everybody, you don't have to respect them. You don't have to agree with them, uh, but you can respect them. There are people who have different political views than I do. I don't have to agree with them, but I can respect that person. That people have different religious views than me. I have a lot of friends that are totally different denominational affiliation than I do, but we have great fellowship. You can respect a person and disagree with them. You don't have to be just like me. You don't have to think like me. That's another thing. Sometimes people think if you don't think like me, there's something wrong with you. You ain't got to think just like everybody. No, do your own thinking. All right, so Jamie, I heard Universal had an awesome program giving our leaders awards. Oh, that's great. I saw some church I saw on news, and I wish I had known about it. 'Cause I thought that would be nice to recognize. I think it's good to recognize people for what I don't know if that's what I saw on the news, but I did see someone on the news who they gave an award. I saw where they gave award to one of the news anchors persons. So I think that's great. I think people ought to be recognized for what they do. Was positive because many times we're unwilling to recognize people for the positive things to do, but we're so quick to criticize people for negative things. We're so quick to tear people down and it's just lift people up, lift different people up, lift different cultures up. Let's make a difference. You know, thanks as well. That's true. Yeah, yeah. Let's make a difference. We can criticize people, and don't let me get to the point. See, we have to understand the impact of what we do. Sometimes, even as African Americans, we are taught to put each other down. That's how we are. That's how we. No, that ain't how we are. That's how some are. I'm not going to buy into that. There are some outstanding African American people that have contributed a lot. There are still great men and women of African American heritage that are doing great things. So we don't want to buy into that anything negative. They're not going to do a good job. They can do a fantastic job. You may have to work even harder. Many times I've been blessed, but I realize it because of stereotypes. A lot of times I've had to work harder than another person just to get a little bit of respect. But that's the way it is. But I understand that everybody's not like that. See, what happens is the problem is many times we generalize everybody's like this right here. And that's why it's good to have an understanding when it comes to race issues. Get an understanding. Everybody don't think alike. So because you don't think like another person or you don't respond the way that person, then that doesn't mean that you are not or against that person. Everybody's not going to think alike and everybody's not going to respond alike. So Jamie, yes, Bishop, we lift you up before this month ends up into the months to come for your leadership. Amen. Praise the Lord. I receive that. And so we've got to be willing to just be out there and be powerful and be strong in the Lord and be vigilant and know what's happening and know what's going on. Know what's going on. We're not ignorant concerning the devil's devices, but you gotta know what's going on. And be thankful for who you are. Wherever culture you are, be grateful and thankful and embrace that. I thank God for all the different heritages, all the different cultures, and all the different friends I've made. And when I do missionary trip, Montserrat, West Indies, Dominican Republic, Africa, Nigeria, Bahamas, just different places I've been to, and I see God's a universal God, but let's not limit God. God's a universal God, and see sometimes stereotypes will affect you too. I got about a couple more minutes, and I'm gonna wrap it. Stereotype. When I first went to Nigeria, West Africa, I was amazed at what I saw because my own prejudice, my own stereotype, and what I had expected to see, I was amazed at the intellect of those individuals and how gifted and how talented they were, and how those who had little resources were able to take the little resources they had. And see, that's why you've got to have a broader perspective on life, and a broader perspective on people. Don't be closed minded. Don't judge people by what you see on TV. I'm gonna say again, don't judge people by what you see on TV because TV can give a slant. The news can give a slant, and news many times will only portray what they want you to see. And I'm not going to talk about anybody, but many times when you are watching news and they ask somebody what's going on, they don't get the person who has the most positive, who are able to articulate what they saw. They use sometimes get a person who is less capable of articulating what they saw. So, Pool, people need to travel and see other cultures. That's so true, because I'm telling you, you will see God as a universal God. My view of God changed when I went to different countries. See, we oftentimes put ourselves in this little box and we think we know it all. No, we don't know it all. We don't know it all. The Queen of Sheba put it this way: when she came to see Solomon's temple, she said, "I heard about it, but the half have not been told." God is greater than our small, finite mind. We have to come outside the box and think on a broad perspective. We got to think on broad perspective all the way around, emotionally, mentally, financially, political, spiritual. We have to enhance and magnify our view of God and other people. And sometimes I'm going to say this, I'm going to try to close this right here. If my belief structure allows me to minimize a person because of the color of his or her skin, that I am not going to be able to understand and be able to recognize the true value that person has. I've had white friends who said, you know what? Until I met you, you changed my view of Black people, because we are limited when we put ourselves in a box and don't are not exposed to other people. Then we are led by a negative view of thinking what we've been told. But when you come and get to know a person, know someone from different culture, there's a lot of good people in all races. There are a lot of good people. But the enemy wants to separate us. He doesn't want there to be any unity. He doesn't want there to be any fellowship. And so we as godly men and women must be willing to forge ahead and allow ourselves to make a positive change. And Sister Robin Cool said, hey, go across the country, man. See things in a different world. You may see yourself from a different perspective. I'm gonna say, I remember when I was in Dominican Republic, a lot of us over here, and I've heard people say, people over here, they need to learn the English, they need to learn the culture, and they get so irritated because the people come over here and they may speak Spanish, they may speak whatever language they speak, and we can't understand what they're saying. And yes, it's kind of frustrating. It's frustrating. I remember when I was in the Dominican Republic, and we usually have a interpreter with us, and I know just a little bit of Spanish, just enough to get in trouble if I ain't careful. And so I wanted to order something, and I was trying to order it, and I could see the frustration on the person as I was ordering, because I was trying to speak a little Spanish. I said, "Oh, now I see. This is how they see us." So when the tables are turned, you see how people. So it taught me to be more patient with other people. But sometimes you don't know unless you have interaction with people. There's some people that they don't want their kids to interact with Black children or Hispanics or African or whatever descent, Italian, whatever it is. They and they're depriving themselves. They're depriving themselves of a lot of knowledge and wisdom and experience. So we have to just kind of work on the church and ask the church, what are we really about? What is the purpose of the church? Is the church just to stay in the four walls? But I think the church is greater than staying in the four walls. This is my view. The church is greater than me just staying in the four walls and not affecting somebody. We should be able to affect someone, positive change. Someone should be able to look at you. The scripture said, let your light so shine that men may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So you need to live such a life, a broad perspective life, that you begin to reflect the greatness of God. God is not a small God. He's a great God. So we have to understand and respect it. Listen, we love you. God bless you. Thanks for those who gave comments on here. We appreciate you. We appreciate your comments. Those who watch this at a later time, feel free to leave your comments, because I do want to know what you think. There's some people who don't like coming here live, and that's okay. But please share your thoughts and your comments with me even after the program comes on. We love you. God bless you. Thank you again. You be